Ocean Model Working Group. I'm Gustavo Marquez, and together with Ian Grooms, we are both the co-chairs for the Ocean Model Working Group. We have divided the two sessions this afternoon to be, the first one is mostly applications, with the exception of the first talk from John Dennis, which you had to switch because John is in the UK, so it's later for him already. And then the second part of the session will be on more like development. There is a poster session at the end of the day, so please go check the posters as well. What else? The talks are 20 minutes. The speakers, please plan to be like around 18 minutes, so we have enough time for questions at the end of your talk. We've also put two discussion times, one right before the break. So 2:30 to 3 is a break, and we'll have a discussion around 2:20, so 10 minutes for the first part, and then another 10 minutes at the end of the second session. And with that, I'll pass to our first speaker, which will be John Dennis. John, are you online?
I am.
Can you please share your screen? Okay, please go ahead and take over.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen if it can be switched over, I think. All right, so can everybody hear my, see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Yeah, okay, thank you. So this is thanks for the opportunity to speak, and of course also thanks for being the first in line here, because it is a little bit later over in Scotland. So this is the update on the Turbo project. All right, so this may be a repeat to some of you, but I'm going to do it for one more talk, and then I'm going to change it up a little bit. So kind of sharing what the Turbo project is, there's the acronym. It's to enable MOM6 to efficiently utilize both CPU and GPU-based systems, enable cutting-edge oceanography, and basically to gain access to all leadership class systems at the NSF and DOE. And this is a 5-year NSF Cyber Infrastructure for Sustained Scientific Innovation grant, and it's a collaboration between CGD, CESL, Texas A&M, and GFDL. And we're almost completed the first year of the project here in a couple of weeks. So the Turbo team, led by CoCan and with contributions from the other groups. I won't read all the information here, but in the Texas, the TAMU is an educational training component. So one of the motivations is the NSF Horizon system. This is a $250 million investment that's being system that's being installed currently. It's a TAC. And it's a large system. Obviously, about 20% of the system capability is on CPU based, and 80% of the system is on GPU based. And we want to be able to make sure that the community can access the entire system, not just a small piece of it. So the Turbo project approach is to evolve the MOM6 code base such that it can effectively utilize both CPU and GPU, create an alternative for the flexible modeling system, FMS, and then evaluate the viability of a pivot away from Fortran to an alternative language approach. So since when we were funded and when the proposal went in, GFDL has been focusing on directive-based approaches using Fortran. So this is an alternative. I think these efforts are complementary. And to use AMRIX, which is a C++ productivity framework, as a key enabling technology for the pivot. And so why pivot? There's significantly less support for Fortran and even less for Fortran on GPUs. Buggy support for Fortran on the GPUs. This is an example. I think it's useful to illustrate this. The NSF Earthworks project. This was an effort to GPU enable the CAM model. And at one time, so we had compiler versions of NVHPC. The restarts were non bit for bit. There was an upgrade, and then the compiler would not compile netcdf, and then they upgraded again to a point where it fixed the restarts, but then it leaked memory at about 88 megabytes per simulated day. So we were kind of stuck for about 8 months in the project, not being able to release any software, and basically beholden upon the compiler vendor to fix something that was actually a very challenging bug to locate. So we actually wanted to focus on looking at our bugs that the users create, not the bugs that the software vendors have in their code. So this is, we're gaining experience here with this project, and we're trying to note it here. So the first Fortran compiler bug impacted the project 1.5 weeks into the Turbo project. And so far, we have not run into a single C++ compiler bug yet. So that's just our experience so far. So we're using Amrex. This is a C++ productivity framework. It was supported through the Exascale Computing Project. It's used by a number of different application areas. It supports CPU and GPU, assumes logically rectangular grids, and provides infrastructure for I/O and message passing. And it grew out of a community of basically Fortran compatibility. So it was basically designed for if you have a Fortran application and you want to migrate it to C++. So this is the Turbo software stack. The blue stuff is the Fortran. And so MOM6 FMS interface, and then the FMS infrastructure layer, and the lighter yellow is the C++, and it's going to have this thing called TIM, which is a turbo infrastructure for MOM. It's kind of an alternative to FMS, and it's based upon Amrex, and then there's ProtoMom XX, and that's would be like what a prototype MOM written in C++ might look like. So the timeline of the project, again, we are almost 2 weeks shy of having been active for a year, and we don't quite have ProtoMom yet. Maybe I should have taken that off the slide. But we're looking for a decision point in the July time frame of next year about whether to go forward with C++ or the Fortran code base. So some of the current status of the project, we've integrated the existing MOM build with CMake. We have multiple continuous integration things. This is all software speak. I'm sorry about that. We have unit tests for the FMS and TIM interface. We have partial implementation of the FMS alternative. One of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit more extensively is the ability to execute pieces of MOM6 using non-trivial Amrex code. And this is pieces of the continuity solver. This allows for bottom-up development. ProtoMom, which is a C++ prototype driver, allows for top-down development, and we're adding unit tests as we go, and then we're using agentic AI for code translation. And I want to talk about that a little bit because I think it's a real impressive enabling technology. So what we did is we were asking that, obviously MOM's a fairly big code base, and you can't magically wave a magic wand and convert it all at once. So we are looking at how do we do this, and so we came up with this kind of concept where we have different language implementations of the model, and then we use AI to convert between them. So you have the original MOM6 style, and this is what you've been programming in for as long as you've been working in MOM6. There's the GPU style MOM6 Fortran, And this is the work that Access, NRI, and GFDL has been working on. And it will eventually be present in the broader MOM6 code base. It's not there yet. And there's this thing called Amric style Fortran. It's kind of temporary. That's why I'm not going to really talk about it, but it's there. It's designed to be match some of the data structures, make it more friendly for the C++ to Fortran interoperability. And then there's Fortran style Amrics. So this is actually C++ code, and it's developed as part of the Turbo project. Maintains the original structure of MOM6, but it's just written using the Amrics C++ productivity framework. So how this works here is we have these different flavors of source code. You have the original, and you convert it into this GPU style Fortran, and this requires a considerable amount of human effort, at least at the moment, and we're not quite sure if we can do that. How applicable AI is to this. Converting it into Amric style Fortran is human plus AI collaboration, and then conversion into C++ is basically primarily an AI activity. And so I think the interesting thing is, we're learning how to do this. And so the first attempt to do this kind of cycle involved ChatGPT and human, and this was kind of chatting with the thing. And, I asked the question, how would I convert a MOM6 subroutine to Amrics? This ended up taking about 3 weeks because, just refining the process. Basically, once we got an idea on how to do it, then we redid it again with ChatGPT. This was about 3 to 4 days of work, and so then there's this thing called agentic AI, and so you can ask an AI to do the work for you, and you give it basically instructions. And so now we're down to about 40 minutes to do this conversion. So that's a real strong enabling technology. And what it does is it generates unit tests, and it does the code conversion. It inserts shims, creates unit tests. So basically, you're not trusting the AI to basically say that it's correct. What it does is it captures data that's coming out of the Fortran code, and then it compares to what the AI generated C++ calculates. I'm gonna show you a little bit of this because I think I want to expose the community to what a C++ looking or based MOM might look like. So this is the stuff this is an example of the stuff that you've been looking at for a while. Explicitly sized arrays, nested do loops over the loops. So this is MOM6 GPU style. So this is something that the GFDL and has been working on. Added additional vertical grid types, promoted to 3D variables, so you're exposing more parallelism. And then you replaced the do loops with a do concurrent. So that allows the GPU enablement. And so minor tweak. Again, it will eventually be in the broader code base. So this is what the C++ looks like. And personally, I think it's very readable, but I'm going to give you pointers so that you can take a look at it yourself and provide feedback. So it has a couple of different concepts: a box over which to iterate. Instead of a collection of integers, it's a box structure, multidimensional arrays, a real scalar, and then basically this is what the do loop or do concurrent has been turned into as a parallel for lambda. And essentially what it does is it performs these calculations, and it performs these calculations on a point-wise basis. So if you think of elemental functions. This is basically the C++ equivalent of this. This is what it looks like. I think it's no more or less readable than the Fortran is, but I do tend to read different languages. So again, you're performing calculations over single grid points, and the structure and the comments are preserved by the data conversion. So to me, it looks like just a little bit different Fortran than Fortran. And of course, the other thing, if you back up, it has the indexing structure that you like. I mean, it looks like a multi-dimensional array. You're not exposing like this flattening or kind of ugly stuff. So it looks like Fortran indices, and this is one of the features of this productivity language, is it's designed to make it easy to convert, or it's easy for Fortran programmers. All right, so here's some example code, and so I would encourage you to take a look at it. I guess we need to share the things before you can click on the links, but to see how readable it is and what your thoughts are, and again, we welcome feedback. So what about performance? This was an exciting kind of thing that we just got results on over the weekend. As it turns out, all talks come together at the last minute. So what we did is we performed a sweep over problem sizes, and that's on the x-axis, and then we looked at the ratios, comparing it to on the CPU, the two different programming models on the CPU and the two different programming models on the GPU. And so what you see here is that basically if it's above the line 1, then Amrix is faster, and if it's below the line, then Fortran is faster. So this was actually, and another thing that I should note here, these vertical lines here basically represent the problem size that's consistent with what is typically run in production. So the Amrix is pretty consistently faster than the Fortran in problem sizes that are consistent with what you run in production. It's slower than the Fortran on the CPU only, with really small problem sizes, but nobody's going to run over here. So anyway, so this was kind of a very great result, because we were not expecting this to be faster. And and it's where you run in production here, this is 10%, 15% faster. So it's not huge, but it's every little bit is nice. The other thing that we had was we looked at, again, this is part of the continuity solver. We have not ported all of it at the moment, so this is a piece of it. I think about 7 subroutines or something like that. And so what we looked at is the kernel throughput, so cell updates per second. And so what you want this to be higher, because that's running faster. And so again, the sweep through the problem sizes, and then you see the orange, which is the GPU is higher than the blue, which is the CPU. And if you calculate this, you see about a speed above a factor of 6 when you compare a full CPU node to a GPU device. So this is also kind of what we were hoping for and what we've seen on other codes. This will not hold as we get more of the model on the GPU, but it's still a good place to start. So, okay. So some conclusions, we're leveraging the GFDL access NRI work, partial implementation of the MOM continuity solver written in Amrix. It also matches bit for bit with the Fortran, the Amrix does. on both CPU and GPU, so that's nice. Just a little bit faster than the Fortran and the 3.8, 6.3x reduction in execution time for one A100 GPU versus one derecho node. We've got a well-defined continuous integration test-driven development pipeline. I think this is really what you need to do to move large volumes of code and have confidence that it's going to get the right answer. Utilizing agentic AI for language conversions. And so we have multiple Amrix implementations for MOM subroutines. Again, we'd love feedback on that. And so far, very positive experience with the C++ compiler quality. The only bugs we found so far is the ones that we have created ourselves versus the compiler that are in the compiler. All right, questions?
Thank you, John. We have time for a few questions from the audience first. And there's also questions that can be submitted online via Slido. Yeah.
Hi, John. This is Ian. You said, so you get 6.3 times speed up when you go on the GPU, which is great. You expect that to change when you get more of the model ported over. Do you expect it to go up or down, though?
It's probably going to go down. The code that we've looked at so far is quite easy, and it doesn't have any subtleties. So it's probably going to drop some. It's still going to be significantly faster. It's just a matter of whether it's going to be 3 times faster, 4 times, or 5 times. So.
Okay, let's thank John one more time. Sanki, are you online?
Yes, I am. I'm going to share my screen then.
Wonderful, thank you. So our next speaker is Sanki Lee from NOAA AOML. And Sanki will talk about resolving deep overflows in a low to medium resolution MOM6 for estimating the historical evolution of the AMOC.
Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so you see that title have changed it, but the main goal is the same, which is to estimate the long-term changes in the Atlantic Meridional overturning circulation, or simply AMOC, since the mid-1950s, and to understand the drivers. So, however, there are some, wait a second, let me activate this video cover. Yeah, sorry. So, however, there are some critical gaps in AMOC observations and also modeling to achieve this goal. So, to address these gaps, we used a robust diagnostic ocean models with the temperature and salinity relaxed toward the historical hydrographic database. So, this ocean model is based on GFDL's MOM6 at a 1/4-degree resolution with 75 layers in hybrid coordinate system. And the model temperature and salinity were relaxed to World Ocean Atlas 23. However, initial runs of this model shows that the AMOC transport, so this is the observation, this is the model result. So AMOC transport across the rapid line was too weak. And then if you look into OSNet East, the deep overflow coming from the Nordic Sea passing the OSNet line was underestimated here, as you can see here. So we have to make some modification. First, we deepened the Denmark Strait and also the Faroe Bank channel, and also widened these 2 channels to have at least 4 grid points across these 2 channels. And then after that, this topography adjustment, the AMOC transport, and the profiles of the AMOC over the rapid lines and the OSNet lines looks much closer to the observations here. And then I just want to let you know that even with the 1 degree resolution and then half degree resolution, this topography adjustment really improved the AMOC transport and profiles very well. But my presentation is based on the quarter degree resolution. So let's first discuss the baseline. So this is the AMOC stream function in sigma coordinates for the baseline period of 1955 to 64. And these three panels here shows the AMOC profiles at 45 degree north, 70 north, and 80 degree north. So the net transport of about 21 spur drop across the 45 degree north has to be exactly balanced by the sinking in the subpolar region here and the northern Nordic Sea here, and also in the Arctic Ocean beyond 80 degree north across the French Strait and Barents Sea. So important things to note here is that the sinking in the Nordic Sea and the Arctic Oceans are quite large. So when you combine the two, they're pretty much comparable to the sinking in the subpolar region. So I'll come back to this these changes in the later slide. Okay, so this is a basic summary of what I'm going to show you in the next slide. So this baseline state of the AMOC evolved in time in 3 different stages. First is for 30 years can be described as prolonged weakening period. And the second, there is a partial recovery for this brief 10 years. And then there is a resumption of the declines afterwards since 2005. So I'm going to talk about these 3 stages in the next slide. So here, time goes from right to left. So here, this is for the 1965 to 74, this 10-year average. And then this is for the 1955 to 84, 85 to 94, and 95 to 2004. So time goes this way. So, and the control line shows the total, and then color shade is the difference between each corresponding period and the baseline period. So the blue means it's weakening and red means increasing. And the bottom panel shows the regional components of the AMOC and the changes. For instance, for this one, 45 degree north, left bar shows the total AMOC transport at 40 degree 5 north for this particular period, 95 to 2004, and this cross bar is for the baseline period. So this number shows the difference between this period and then this baseline period. So there are a lot of things to digest here for each decadal period. So I'm going to just give you a brief summary of what you see here. So during the first 3 decadal period here, the AMOC weakening is largely due to the subpolar sinking deficit. So it's happening in subpolar region. However, the deep return flow become lighter during this 20-year period, 1975 to 1994. And then this 3 decadal period lines up very well with the great salinity anomalies of 1970s, 80s, and 90s. And then for this period of 1995 to 2004, there is a partial recovery period. And this is the kind of delayed response to the deepest, densest Labrador seawater formed in the early to mid-90s. And that was forced by the positive phase of NAO. This is pretty well established increase in MOC during this time. And then another thing to notice is that the Arctic Ocean is starting to show an increase in the water mass transformation during this period. Okay, next is a open ocean convection. here during this time, the AMOC at 45 degree decreased by more than 2 Spurger. And this is largely due to the subpolar sinking deficit here, about 2.5 Spurger up here. And then you can see that the sinking in the Nordic Sea start to decline for the first time in this region. And there is a increase in the sinking in the Arctic Ocean. This compensates for the sinking deficit in the Nordic Sea, so that the overall for this Northern Sea is pretty much stable during this particular decadal period. Okay, during the most recent decadal period of 2015 to 22, the AMOC at 45 degree north is still reduced by more than 2 Spurger. And the subpolar sinking partially recovers from about 4.5 Spurger deficit in earlier period, previous decadal period to only 1.4 Spurger deficit. However, the sinking in the Nordic Sea reduced by more than 1 Spurger. And if you remember the total sinking in the Nordic Sea, we're talking about a little more than 4 Spurger. So this accounts for like a 25% reduction from the baseline. So that's a lot for this region. And also the sinking in the Arctic Ocean also increases, but it is insufficient to compensate for the sinking deficit in the Nordic Sea. So overall, this indicates that there is erosion of the northern stability here. Okay, so to understand what's driving this overall AMOC declines, let's just look into the mixed layer depth anomaly, which is a proxy for open ocean convection. So the mixed layer depth anomaly here for this period of 1995 to 2004 show a sign of the increase here, and that is due to the NA forced deep convection and the related formation of the deep and dense Labrador Sea water that was formed during the early to mid 1990s, and so this is pretty well known anomalies here. And there is, you can see a clear sign of the suppressed deconvection during 2005 to 2014, which is consistent with the reduction of the AMOC through this time, especially in the subpolar region. And in the most recent decadal period of 2015 to 22, the mixed layer signal is kind of mixed. So you can see there is an increase in open ocean convection here, but also suppression along the boundaries here. I mean, the sea and also Labrador Sea, you see that. And then what is interesting is that you can see similar kind of mixed layer depth anomaly patterns during the 85 to 94, and to a certain degree also in the 1975 to 84. And then another thing to notice is that for the entire period from 1975 to 2022, the deconvection in the Nordic Sea was very much reduced here all the way. So Nordic Sea is suffering this big anomalies for a long time. Okay, so to further understand the role of the salinity versus temperature on this interdecadal AMOC changes, we carried out 2 sets of sensitivity experiments. In the first set, the model was forced with the actual decadal salinity field, so salinity changed with time. However, the temperature was kept constant, kept at the reference period, so it's just a monthly climatology, just repeating. So no changes, interdecadal changes in temperature. So this set of experiment will isolate the impact of salinity. And then in the second set, the model was forced with the actual decadal temperature field. Then the salinity was kept at the reference level. So in order to isolate the impact of thermal forcing. So let me give you a brief summary of that. So for the period of 1975 to 2004, time goes from here to here. Time goes that direction. So that panel is for the salinity effect. And the mid panel is for the temperature impact. And the right panel here is for the quantification. So for the period of 75 to 2004, it is overwhelmingly salinity that drives the AMO weakening, not the temperature. And this is likely to be linked to great salinity anomalies of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the thermal forcing actually increased the AMOC. And this is kind of consistent with an idea that the thermal forcing provide a negative feedback to the salinity-driven weakening. You know, those things associated with the warming hole. So it's kind of consistent with that idea. Okay, let's move on to the more recent period. So during the recent period, the salinity still drives the weakening of the AMOC, not the temperature. So this is also consistent with the recent freshening episode that was reported in the recent studies during this 2012 to 22. But more importantly, a very interesting result is that if you look into this, the thermal forcing is no longer buffers the salinity-driven decline. It actually, it worked along with it to weaken the AMOC. So for instance, this is for the AMOC transport at 45 degrees north. This is for the salinity only experiment. This is temperature only experiment. Both of them actually weaken the AMOC. And if you look into the previous ghetto period, same thing. Both the salinity and temperature weakens it. And I want you to pay attention to particularly this part, Nordic Sea. So it looks like the warming in the Nordic Sea, which I'm going to show you in the next slide, looks like that plays a very important role of this kind of flip in the thermal contribution to AMOC during this recent period. Okay. All right, so this plot shows the upper ocean salinity here and the upper ocean temperature anomalies. So time goes from here right to the left of cases. And you can see great salinity anomaly here during this period, you know, that is occupying this region of the Western South Pole and North Atlantic. And then looks like they seems to be all linked to the Arctic export of the freshwater and the Greenland ice melt. The special pattern appears to be linked to that. And if you look into a more recent period, you see the freshening also, and you can also see some kind of a special connection with this highlighted here, Arctic and Greenland as well. And then if you look into the temperature for the 1965 to 94, there was a cooling here in the western subpolar region, and that definitely buffers the freshwater cap from the salinity anomaly. However, the warming in the Nordic Sea here in the recent period, look at the big warming in the Nordic Sea, and also there was a slight warming along the Labrador Current region. And this seems to kind of add to the freshwater cap to further increase the buoyancy here, and therefore should weaken the adaptive mixing in this region. And it appears that there's still warming hole is there, which is, yeah, warming hole is there, but this could be due to the open ocean convection, according to some studies, which is actually true because deep convection activity actually increased during this period. But it could be a sign of the reduced heat transport from the subtropical regions. So whatever the case is, whatever the origin of this anomaly, this is not really enough to compensate for the warming in the Nordic Sea and also along the Labrador Current. Okay, this is summary. So looks like I have 1 more minute, so I can just go through this. So first of all, the AMOC's interdecadal evolution from the base period follows its 3 stages: prolonged weakening, and then a brief partial recovery, and then subsequent steep decline. And this regional footprint of decline shift over time, all year reduction is largely driven by subpolar sinking deficit, but more recent period, the weakening is about 10% compared to the baseline period, and that is due to the combined reduction of the sinking over the subpolar region and Nordic Sea. Arctic Sea is trying very hard to compensate for it, but it's not enough. And this weakening is overwhelmingly freshwater driven based on our sensitivity experiment. So we could conclude that the AMOC system has been operating under persisting state of the Great Saline Anomaly since the mid-1960s, or I should say freshening events. And then, during the 1975-2004, the relatively cold state in the western subpolar North Atlantic buffers this freshwater-driven decline. However, this buffering mechanism reverses in 2005 to 2022 due to the anomalous warming of the Labrador Current and the Nordic Sea. Thank you very much.
We have time for a few questions. Peter?
So, given that the decline is freshwater driven, how confident are you in the freshwater forcing that you're using to force this model?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of the ocean model, the ocean model has a big task, a very difficult task, because you got to put the right amount of the freshwater forcing at the right time, right location. But this one is different. This one is temperature salinities is given by the world ocean atlas. So for the decadal mean, for the 50s and 60s and 70s, all different timing periods. So the model actually reacts to that temperature salinity that is prescribed, relaxed toward. So this model does not really need to resolve this forcing. So that's a little difference between this diagnostic model and the prognostic model. Thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions, we can thank Singly one more time and move to our next speaker.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Fred Castruccio from NSF and CARM, and I'll let you read the title just in case you change it as well.
Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity to present the study that we recently published with Gorkan. So I'm going to talk about simulated and observed transport estimate across the OSNAP section. And you can see the long list of co-authors from all the modeling center that participated in this multi-model intercomparison. Next. How do you move to the next slide? It's not working, I don't know. Oh, no, it's this one, okay. So the respective role of the Labrador Sea and the American Sea on decadal timescale remain relatively unclear. But here we are going to focus more on like shorter timescale. So during the observational period for OSNAP 2014 to 2022 period, and we are going to use OMIP style simulation. All the model are forced with reanalysis, so GRAD or forcing. The simulation cover usually like from 1958 to 2023, but again, we are going to mostly focus on the observational period. Here is, if you're not familiar with like OSNAP, this is like a map showing where the line is. So the orange dot essentially are all the mooring location that are used to estimate the transport across the subpolar North Atlantic, and you have the OSNAP West section that cover the Labrador Sea, and OSNAP East across the North Atlantic. As an illustration for this study, we developed like a tool that let us extract the best model line that fit through those mooring. And so you have two illustrations of that. One with a relatively high resolution model, so that's like this like solid black line essentially. So you can see that there is very small steps because of the fine resolution. And the dotted dashed line is showing like a 1 degree-ish model. So you can see, yeah, that with like coarser resolution, essentially we have like that impact on the coarse resolution on the discretization. Okay, it's not moving again. You have to change button from slide to slide, apparently. It's kind of weird. So just like digging a little bit deeper in the study, so we have like all these modeling centers that participated with a variety of like ocean model, ICOM, MOM5 and MOM6, MPAS, NEMO, and POP for NCAR. While we also have MOM6 from NCAR actually. So this is a total of 18 simulations ranging in horizontal resolution from about 1 degree to all the way up to 1/20th of a degree or 0.005. And there is a mixture of like vertical coordinates and number of vertical level from 36 all the way to 98 level. So quickly, this is just like now looking at the transport essentially across OSNAP from all those models, and I split them into like the top row is for the low resolution, middle is for medium resolution, so medium resolution is all the 1/4 degree resolution, and the bottom row is for like all the high res, so typically like 1/10 of a degree and finer, and you have OSNAP West, OSNAP East, and the total transport across the combined section. The black line is the observation, and the gray shading is the departure, like the variability around the observational mean, and all the color line are the various models. So what you see is that essentially like the model are in agreement with the observation in the sense that the transport at OSNAP West is much smaller than the transport at OSNAP East, and the total overturning circulation is dominated by in terms of the mean overturning, it's dominating by what's happening on the east side. You can see also that qualitatively you see improvement going from the low resolution where you have like model that tend to be a little bit crazy. One of them is POP, by the way, the red line. It's the 1 degree POP. And then like when you move like to finer resolution, the model tend to agree better among themselves and also with the observation. So this is an overview of the OSNAP transport. So now you can think about it as like a stream function again, except that the summation is happening from like the west side to the east side, so from Canada all the way to the UK. And it's again like the same ordering, like low resolution at the top, medium resolution in the middle, high res at the bottom. And this time I split the transport between like the upper limb and the lower limb using like the maximum, the density of the maximum transport like on average. And again, in that view, you can see like qualitatively, I think it's very clear that when you move to higher resolution, the agreement among the model and with the observation tend to increase. So if you look at the low resolution, for example, we see that the model have a very hard time to capture like the strong flow in the lap sea, in the boundary current, due to the lack of resolution. And then when you move to the 1/4 degree resolution, you start to represent that a little bit better, but there is a lot of like difference across the various model in terms of like the magnitude of the flow. And then when you move to high res, it starts to all like be in much better agreement with the observation. So one thing we argue in that study is that people should well, sorry, the color is kind of washed out. It's a little bit hard to see. But so we think that it's like looking at the MOC like in depth space or density space is a limitation, and so we argue that people should maybe think about looking at it in that framework, which is a two-dimensional view. So we are binning essentially the transport in depth and density, and that's the color shading with like blue or like southward flow and red or northward flow. And when if you integrate like horizontally, and then you integrate top to bottom, you recover like the classic like stream function in depth space. And now if you do the summation like along the isodensity line, you recover the stream function in density space. So those are like the thick Tholen line in the panel at the top and on the side of the two-dimensional histogram. And so you can see in that framework that contrary to like some of the argument that there is less compensation in density space, this is not really the case. Like, I mean, you can see, there is a lot of cancellation happening, like if you integrate vertically or horizontally. So that's why we think that this is a nicer way to look at the MOC. One thing that we didn't really realize, I think, before this analysis is that really like the space you use to do your summation for the MOC really matter. And this is illustrated here. So you can see that essentially like when you go from like sigma 0 to sigma 2, there is a systematic like increase in the transport that you estimate. And this is true in the observation. So that's the black round point and in all the model. In addition to that, if you look at the ratio of the maximum transport between east and west, changing referential also change that ratio essentially. So this is illustrated by the bottom right panel that show that ratio, and you can see that on average, like there is a 35% increase of that ratio when on average for all the model. And again, like the observation is consistent with that, with like almost like 40% increase in the ratio. We also like try to relate like the mean transport to hydrographic biases in the model. And so here I'm showing like the relationship between the mean transport and the temperature and salinity and density bias in the Labrador Sea, and on the top row in the Irmigan Sea, on the bottom row, and you can see that there is some weak relationship between the two in temperature and salinity space. For the Labrador Sea. In the Irmigan Sea, like mostly the salinity is kind of like, so if you increase the bias in salinity, you will have like a larger transport essentially. In density, we don't find any statistically significant relationship. Mostly like there is a lot of compensation, in terms of like density bias. And that's why we lost that relationship. Just a few words on like this. You may have heard about it or not, but like there is a new line that is coming up. It's the Scotia Canada Overturning Array, or Scotia in short. And so this line is actually using like part of like the OSNAP array that was in the water like prior to OSNAP coming online, because they are so they are not using essentially the array that are around Greenland, but they just like use the Canadian and UK end of the array in combination with Argo. And because of that, they have been able to extend backward in time. And so it's the first time we have like a long 20-year time series of overturning transport at high latitude in the subpolar North Atlantic. And so I used the same tool that I used for OSNAP and extracted the line. It's as illustrated in the figure, and so we can compute the transport. This is just for one of the model, but we plan to redo that same kind of exercise with all the model. So you can see that there is like a pretty good agreement between, like in that case, it's like our high-res NCAR 1/10 model. And one thing I will point out is that in that 20-year time series, like from the observation, there is actually a weak increase of the meridional overturning circulation. So we can redo all the same kind of exercise. So again, like there is pretty good agreement between the model and the observation at that line. And one thing that is interesting is now we have a much longer time series. So this is just like showing transport profile anomaly in density space, and you can start to see this like deep anomaly that, and you can have, there is a hint that those anomalies may be propagate toward like a weaker density. This is reminiscent of like an analysis that was led by Steve Yeager like 5-6 years ago, that hinted at like an oversized role of the Labrador Sea for like the decadal scale variability of the MOC downstream. And now, because we have this longer time series, we can start to like look at again this like long, more like slow variability. And so this is the same figure from earlier. I just applied like a 5-year running mean, and you can still know both in the observation and NCAR 10, you can really see this like anomaly that start to develop at depth, and then it's look like they are moving in toward like the lighter density class. So so that's quite exciting and interesting, and so we hope to look at this kind of like a phenomenon in this like multi-model framework and see if all the models consistently reproduce this. So in summary, so overall, I think we have shown that the simulation compare rather favorably with those SNAP observation, particularly if you consider like integrating measure like the stream function, because of the summation, like we tend to it's tend to agree better. I mean, as indicated, there is remaining difference between the observation and the model, and among the model themselves, and especially when you consider like the coarser resolution model. I think I show that the transport in sigma 2 space is always larger than the transport in sigma 2 space, and we think that people should use sigma 2 and not sigma 0. OSNAP is an outlier by providing the transport in sigma 0. That's the only line that do that. It's not really clear to me why they made that decision, but our results show that I think it's probably not the best space for looking at the MOC. We argue that people should actually not look look at the MOC in a single space, but use this like two-dimensional histogram to look at the MOC and get a more complete picture of like the property of the MOC. And I also like show that there is this new Scotia line that provide like the first observational base estimate of decadal, well, it's not really decadal because it's only 20 years, but like multi-annual to decadal variability transport in the subpolar, and we are excited to essentially reproduce what we have done with OSNAP using this product to look more at the longer variability. And if you want to know more, like you can go see our paper that was just published actually this morning. So good timing. Thank you.
Questions from the audience? Oh, I have.
You go back, but the first comparison in that sigma z space, it looked to me, if I understood the plot right, well, no, forward. No, for the one with the the 2D histogram kind of thing, that one.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to understand is in the, I understand the upper plots are,
Yeah.
the horizontal integral in the upper, in the middle panels is in z space. Well, the question is, if the stream function was a true representation of the total flow, the stream function should go to 0 at the top and the bottom. Yet the black curves do not go to 0 in any of those panels. And in fact, the difference from 0 is comparable to the difference between the models. So,
This is if I show you the same plot, but for the total OSNAP, that would be the case. It
oh,
goes
this
to
is
0.
each,
This
I
is
see,
OSNAP
okay,
West
I
and
understand
OSNAP
now,
East.
yeah, okay.
Our version is in global radiative balance, and that poses a challenge for the final stages of tuning. And so the problem is, we like to tune on nice, simple, fast configurations. So for instance,
I have one, yeah.
configuration that has
The
prescribed
new
CESM
array is Scotia,
Yeah.
so it starts the same latitude.
Yeah, so it's used like the same endpoint essentially for an OSNAP. What OSNAP added is like the mooring on both sides of Greenland later. So essentially they are using the mooring on the UK side and Canada were in the water like way before OSNAP was implemented. They used them essentially when they built OSNAP, but they were already observing there. So it's using that, and then it's leveraging a lot of like Argo and CTD profile to also get more observation. So that's how they are able to go back like much further in time. And I think they want to make it like kind of like a semi-operational. So again, like because we get the Argo data like more. So usually those lines, you put the mooring, the instrument in the water. 2 years later, you go back, you get them, you get the data, and you extend your time series. This one, because it's relying so heavily on Argo, which we get the data essentially more like on a real-time basis, they are hoping to be able to extend also like for in time, like almost like near real time. So that's going to be a very nice like product for model validation.
All right, let's thank Fred one more time. And our next speaker is K1. Kai-Wan Lee from University of California, Riverside. Please go take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Kai-Wan Lee. This is the first research of my PhD study with my advisor, Professor Wei Liu. So the title is The Weakened AMOC Causes a Historical North Atlantic Warming Hole. And the AMOC, as we all know, is a large-scale ocean circulation, include northward flow of warm salty water in the upper Atlantic and the southward freshwater in the deep Atlantic. And the AMOC is important, but the direct observations are very limited in the historical period, only starting from 2004, which shows a weakening AMOC during the past 2 decades. So we may ask, how did the AMOC change during the past century? So here we plot the SST trend between 1900 and 2005 in different observation datasets. And we could notice that in the deepwater formation region of the AMOC, which is the subpolar region, there is a very obvious cooling trend in the past century, although the rest of the Atlantic is broadly warming. So this is called the North Atlantic warming hole or the cold blob in some studies.
what we did was we used
In fact, the Atlantic and in fact the AMOC and the warming hole have a very close relationship, so that the SST in the warming hole region can be used as a proxy to reconstruct the AMOC streams. And the AMOC index was firstly brought up by Ramsdorf in 2015, and later the AMOC fingerprint was brought up by CESR in 2018, which is the subpolar region SST anomaly minus the global mean SST anomaly. And as a result, there is a strong correlation between the SST anomaly in the subpolar region in the blue area and the SST anomaly in the Gulf Stream region in the red area. And also there is a strong correlation between the AMOC fingerprint index and the AMOC change in 15 CMIP5 models. This provides us a new perspective, which is using other long-term observed variables that are closely related to the AMOC as proxies to overcome the limitation of the direct observation of the AMOC. So the main goal of our study is to better understand these relationships between the AMOC and the warming hole, and to answer some questions like what is the physical mechanism behind it? Is there a model generation difference? How much did the AMOC decline in the past century? And does the salinity play a role in this process? And what is the role of the AMOC in the warming hole formation process compared to the atmospheric circulation? And to answer these questions, we use 94 CMIP models as I show here, including 41 CMIP5 models and 53 CMIP6 models. And each model has pre-industrial control and historical simulations, and multiple ensembles are included in the historical simulations. And for the observations, we use 6 datasets for sea surface temperature and 3 datasets for sea surface salinity. We first plot the Atlantic sea surface temperature and salinity trend in both observation and CMIP models. Panel A shows the observed SST trend, and we can see that the cooling trend is up to negative 0.34 degrees Celsius per century in the warming hole region. And panel D is the observed SSS trend, and the flattening trend is up to negative 0.25 PSU per century. And for climate models, we found there is model generation difference. Most of the CMIP5 models simulate a weakened AMOC, but most of the CMIP6 models simulate a strengthened AMOC. And based on previous studies, it could result from the model generation difference of the aerosol forcing and aerosol cloud interactions, etc. And we further divide all the CMIP models into 2 groups, the AMOC weakening group and AMOC strengthening group. Panel B and E are the SST and SSS trend for the AMOC weakening group, and panel C and F are for the AMOC strengthening group. So in 51 AMOC weakening models, the AMOC slows down at negative 1.35 square drop per century. And in 43 AMOC strengthening models, the AMOC strengthened at 1.24 square drop per century. And I also show the SST and SSS trend in the 2 groups here. So basically, the AMOC weakening models aligns with the observations with the cooling and freshening trend here. So, and because the temperature and salinity changes could result from a combination of the cooling caused by the AMOC slowdown and the background anthropogenic warming. So we calculate the difference between the AMOC weakening and strengthening group to eliminate the impact of the background warming. And panel A and C are the SST and SSS trend difference between the two groups. And panel B and D are the zonal mean temperature and salinity trend difference in the Atlantic basin. We found that the cooling and freshening are not limited to the surface, but extend into the subsurface ocean. And there are two pronounced regions, the subpolar gyre region in the green box and the Gulf Stream region in the purple box. And so based on these two regions, we defined the AMOC fingerprint index, FPI. We have the FPI SST equal to SST in the subpolar gyre region minus the SST in the Gulf Stream region. And the FPI SSS is the same but for the salinity. And in this figure, the x-axis is the AMOC strength trend during 1900 to 2005. And the y-axis is the FPI SST trend in panel A and FPI SSS trend in panel B. So the scatters are the 94 CME models. We can see that the correlation in panel A is 0.57 and in panel B is 0.42. Both are 99% significant. So that means not only the sea surface temperature, but also the salinity can be the proxy of the AMOC strength. And in panel A, the blue dashed lines are the fingerprint index trend calculated from 6 SST observation datasets. And from the blue dashed lines and the regression line, we can estimate that the AMOC slows down at a rate of roughly -1 to -3 cerebral per century. And if we look at CSM, we can also see a model generation difference here. Weaken AMOC in CSM1 and strengthen AMOC in CSM2. And the next part, to quantify the impact of the weakened AMOC on the warming hole formation and to identify the physical mechanism behind it, we performed the ocean heat and salt budget analysis. For heat budget, the ocean heat storage at certain latitude is determined by the ocean heat uptake from the atmosphere and the ocean heat transport from other latitude in the ocean. So here we use 5 CME5 models and 21 CME6 models that have all the variables required for the heat budget calculation. And for the ocean salt budget is similar. So the ocean salt storage at certain latitude is determined by the surface salt flux from the atmosphere and the ocean salt transport from other latitude in the ocean. Here we use 7 CME6 models that have all the variables required. And then group and strengthening group to highlight the impact of the AMOC rather than the background warming. And in the heat budget, the blue curve is OHU, and the red curve is the meridional gradient of OHT, and the black curve is the total tendency. So we can see that the cooling in the warming hole region between the 50 to 60 north is dominated by the meridional OHT divergence and partially offset by the surface heat flux in the atmosphere. And in the salt budget, the meridional salt transport divergence and the surface freshwater input have roughly the same contribution to the freshening in the warming hole region. The next part is to investigate the role of the AMOC in the warming hole formation process compared to the atmospheric forcings. First, we compare the slab ocean and follicouple experiments in 10 CMIF 3 and CMIF 5 models. For slab ocean models, we use abruptly doubled CO2 experiments, as is shown in panel A here, with no warming hole. And for the follicouple models, we use 1% CO2 experiment and take the year 71 to 80 when the CO2 roughly doubled. As in panel B here, so there is a warming hole along with weakening AMOC in panel C. So the difference between the fully coupled and slab ocean models represent the impact of the ocean circulation, especially the AMOC. And then we compare the JFDL free and fixed current simulation by Winton in 2013. So they are both forced with 1% CO2 increase per year from PI control and run for 100 years. And the free current simulation has a weakening AMOC as in panel D here. But in the fixed current simulation, the ocean currents are prescribed to follow a fixed seasonal cycle in the PI control, therefore a stable AMOC. Panel A and B are the SST anomaly in the free and fixed current simulations, and we can see that there is a obvious warming hole in the free current simulation rather than the fixed current simulation. And panel C and E are the difference between the free and fixed. So the result is very clear that the ocean circulation, especially the AMOC, plays a more important role than the atmospheric circulation in the warming hole formation process. Well, here are some takeaways. So there is a strong and significant correlation between the AMOC change and the SST or SSS-based fingerprint index. A weakened AMOC corresponds to the surface cooling and freshening in the warming hole region. And the cooling and freshening could extend beyond the surface and into the subsurface ocean. And the realistic AMOC is estimated to slow down at a rate of roughly -1 to 3 thermal per century. And based on the heat and salt budget analysis, the AMOC slowdown could produce meridional OHT divergence in the subpolar North Atlantic, leading to the cooling over the warming hole region. And similarly, the weakened AMOC could cause meridional salt transport divergence and promote the surface freshwater input, and both of which could contribute to the freshening over the warming hole. And finally, the ocean circulation, especially the AMOC, plays a more important role than the atmospheric circulation in the warming hole formation process. Well, that's all. Thanks for listening.
Plenty of time for questions.
Thank you for the talk. Could you explain there's a part where you use the slab ocean to look at the, I would say, AMOC and the relationship between the warming hole. So could you explain why you use the slab ocean setup?
Yeah, so we only have the thermodynamic process in the slab ocean, but we have the both dynamic and thermodynamics in the fully coupled. And if we force with anthropogenic forcing like CO2, and there will be atmospheric forcing. But if you compare the slab and fully coupled, then we can see that only the ocean model have the fully coupled, and all the dynamic process in it can simulate a warming hole, and that's why we compare the slab ocean and fully coupled models.
Questions? If not, let's thank the speaker one more time. We now set aside 10 minutes for discussion, intended to be on the previous set of talks, which are AMOC related. Seems like there won't be many questions or things to discuss, but I'll open the floor for you guys to come up with questions or any comments. We can come back at 3:30 and take a longer break now. So enjoy your break. Oh, 3, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad. Just see if Gokhan was paying attention.
right, welcome back everyone for the second afternoon session. We've got 4 talks, 20 minutes each. We're going to start with Gökhan. Do you want to come up? Telling us about the sources of water biases in CESM in the North Atlantic, and then we have 2 talks. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, then we've got a talk from Markina telling us about the new forcing product that she's developing, and a talk from William about a low-res ocean model, and then Gustavo is going to tell us about progress on the ocean component for CESM3, and that's going to lead into the second discussion session, which will take us to the break. And I'll take this opportunity to advertise one more time that we do have some posters up in the poster session, so be sure to take a look at those afterwards. You ready?
Thank you, Ian. Yes, I'm ready. Yeah, great. So this will be about sources of the Arctic-Atlantic water biases in the community Earth system model. Bill said, how am I going to talk about it only in 20 minutes? So I don't know. This is not going to be, we don't have all the, well, we don't have any solutions that much. So this is led by Hu Kim. I didn't realize that he was coming to this meeting until Friday. I said, well, why don't you give this book, since you led the effort, but it's jet lag and all that stuff, so I'm giving the talk. So all the credit goes to Hu. And this is in collaboration with all the folks listed here, including Yango Kwan and Claude Franquignol from Woodsole Oceanographic Institution. When the project started, I thought that this would be an easy thing to do. Boy, I was wrong. So as many of you know, Earth system models have persistent and significant biases in the representation of the Atlantic water, and usually we'll refer to it in this presentation as AW in the Arctic Ocean. And there are many published studies. This particular one is from 2016, led by Mehmet, showing the biases in temperature and salinity fields in their profile distributions from a large set of forced ocean sea ice simulations. The top panels are temperature, the bottom panels are salinity. In this case, the observation-based one is the PHC3 climatology, that's the dash line, but it doesn't matter whichever climatology that you get. I mean, there's not much data, you get a pretty similar structure for observations. And the top panels are showing the actual temperature profiles. The bottom panels are showing salinity. The absolute profile from observations is shown. The other ones, the color ones, are what the models are showing as their differences from that particular profile. In this presentation and the paper that is under review in James, we primarily focused on temperature profiles. So the bottom line is that you can see quite a bit of spread in model simulations. And the Atlantic layer, usually defined as that temperature profile in the upper 500 meters, is represented quite differently. Generally, the models are too diffuse, they are too cold and too thick. And one exception is our NCAR model. You can see that the light blue line there, NCAR, is one of the really diffuse ones, or thick Atlantic layer, which is actually quite a bit of warm compared to other models. These are now showing the temperature biases, again from the same study at 400 meters depth. They are not along isopycnals. As I said, this is constant depth. The top left is from the PHC3 climatology. All the other plots are from model. They are differences from that particular climatology. And the multi-model mean is shown as the lower right panel here. Most models show a cold bias in the Arctic, and that's reflected in the multi-model mean. A few models, including, as I said, our model, NCAR, that's the older version, CSM, I guess one version of the model in the study, is showing a warm bias. Many studies, if you look at literature, they usually sort of hand-wavy way indicate that the sign of the Arctic biases usually reflect the incoming bias, positive or negative, of the incoming bias Atlantic water layer from the Fram Strait. That bias structure, usually of one sign in the upper 500 meters or so, the point that I'm trying to make here is that even though this is a cut at 400 meters, the sign at the Fram Strait is pretty representative of that bias. So you can see here that there is not much of a relationship between the incoming Atlantic water layer bias in the Arctic Ocean itself. But in many studies, that's usually quoted as one of the reasons for the Arctic bias. This is, there are many papers. This is looking at the Arctic biases from coupled simulations, in this case from a bunch of models participating in CMIP5. Again, the upper panel is temperature. The bottom panels are salinity in the Eurasian basin on the left side and the Canadian basin on your right side. The thick line is from the observation base, PHC3 climatology, and the blue line, the thick blue line, is the multi-model mean. In this case, again, there is quite a bit of diversity among the model simulations, and you can pick your whatever you want to do with these models. This is quite important because the heat storage in that Atlantic water layer can actually have tremendous impacts if it is released, melting the Arctic sea ice quite substantially. So I think it's important to get the proper representation of this, but as you can tell, it's rather challenging. So in this particular study, again, what we are doing is essentially we think that the simulated Atlantic water layer is usually too cold, too thick, and rather sluggish in its sort of current system, and I'll show you a plot on those things as well. So in this study, what we are doing is we are systematically examining in CESM version 2 trying to identify the causes of these biases by performing many sensitivity experiments. And in both the manuscript and in presentation today, I'm going to show you only a subset that we selected to present to make our point here. So majority of our simulations follows what Bill and I did back in 2006, try to sort of restore in certain regions to hydrographic properties, temperature and salinity with a rather strong restoring coefficient, and to see whether they are going to improve biases in these simulations. So we considered, for example, strong restoring in the Genses, that's the dark blue region. Sort of the turquoise, I don't know what the light green region is, the Barents-Kara restoring. Then we did a bunch of experiments. For example, the yellow one is restoring TNS only in those yellow regions. Hopefully you can see them, Eurasian slope. Then we backed out a little bit when we restored only in certain trough regions. Those are the red regions that are shown to identify where these biases are originating from. And most of analysis, as I said, we are focusing on temperature profiles and temperature distributions in the Eurasian basin, that's denoted as the blue contour region EB. And what we are finding, which was also identified in Mehmet's paper, is that St. Anna Trough seems to be one of the main bias originating regions in Atlantic water properties in the Arctic Ocean. Okay, so this is sort of a summary table. Again, as I said, we are just showing a subset here. Wow, this is really loud here. In addition to, I should have backed up a little bit, said that we also performed a few parameter sensitivity experiments reducing the background vertical mixing, because in literature, people argue that there's too much vertical mixing in the background, and it's increasing, making the Atlantic water layer too diffuse. We tried the reductions of that. There are also papers in literature saying that the GM, or mesoscale mixing, is too strong, and it's not doing, we reduced that mixing as well to sort of provide well, we are testing what's actually done in literature. So we have done those experiments as well. So these are sort of the, I don't want you to remember everything, but most of them are restoring experiments. We did low resolution, nominal 1 degree simulations, as well as high resolution, that's 10th of a degree, denoted by HR. Most of our experiments, as you can see, are forced ocean sea ice simulations, and forcing comes from JRA 55, and for this case, these biases appear relatively quickly, and we decided for simplicity to use simple repeat year forcing for the 2003-2004 segment. And then C stands for coupled simulations. So most of our experiments are forced low res. For some promising cases, we did some high res forced cases, and then we also tested some combinations in fully coupled low resolution simulations. All simulations start from World Ocean 13, and they are run for 30 years. This is what we get in the control simulations in this case. So the black line is from observations or observation-based. And in the other cases, the blue is the low-res control, red is the high-res control, and then the coupled one is the yellow case. And you can see that all of them have issues. The Atlantic water representation in this metric is too diffuse, too cold, and the core depth is too deep. And these are comparable plots, spatial plots. Upper panels are for 300 meters roughly, that's the core depth. And then below that is about 800 meters, that's below the core depth. And you can see that general cold bias, particularly on high res, is kind of really interesting. It's really colder than other cases. So similar biases, but I want you to note that compared to our previous model version that uses different forcing, it showed actually a warm bias. Now we are using a slightly different model, but different forcing, JRA 55 in this case. Now we end up getting cold bias in the Arctic. These are now profiles showing impacts of restoring on the left. Let's just look at that. The gray line is the obs, the black line is the control. Two restoring cases, Gensi restoring and Barron-Karasi restoring cases, at least to me surprisingly, they degrade the solution substantially. Those are the purple and the blue lines that you see there. Then we just, if you do just the shelf restoring, that's the yellow line, we get actually really close to the observational profile in the Eurasian basin. When we actually do only the trough restoring in a few cases, then we get the red line. So just by doing a limited restoring in those trough regions, then we can actually capture the, we eliminate the bias quite significantly. The mixing experiments are shown on the right side. Again, the gray and the black lines are observational based and the control case respectively. In this case, reducing vertical mixing background actually degrades the solution quite significantly. And reducing the GM coefficient, that's actually we are using the area scaling to reduce it, then that produces the purple line. Actually, it pushes the maximum in the right direction, but it's still too deep, the core depth, and we still get the cold bias. Then we did combination. In the interest of time, you can just look at the red line that actually includes both reduced vertical mixing, reduced GM, and trough restoring. Then I think we can actually capture it better. So trough restoring seems to be one of the key things here. One thing that circulation is important. So this is one of the reanalysis products, and you be the judge. I don't know how much to trust that. That's showing the velocity profiles at 300 meter depth. Control is in the middle. You don't get much. Everything is small. Vectors below half a centimeter per second are omitted. Then in the trough restoring cases, we start to see a cyclonic circulation pattern well-defined when we essentially restore TNS properties at those trough regions. We think that that's associated with changing density structure. What is shown here is the difference of potential density vertically integrated below roughly 300 meter depth relative to the control. What we start seeing with the trough restoring, we see increased density at depth. And that has actually a steric effect, and that enhances the cyclonic circulation, it's a barotropic circulation pattern. It doesn't exist in simulations in which we do not do trough restoring. And that's interesting, essentially. So Jansi restoring and others do not actually change this circulation pattern. They are very similar to the control. And they do not actually improve this density structure. So high-resolution simulations is a mixed bag. Again, the gray line and the black line are from observations and the control simulation, respectively. Initial 15 years is shown by the dashed black line. That is, so you can see the propagation of the bias from what we start with and what we end up with after 30 years at the black line. When we do the trough restoring in this case, we can see that again in high res, it is actually making a big difference. In this case, the circulation patterns are interesting. The control case circulation pattern is shown by that panel A. You can see some signature of that boundary current. But as soon as we actually incorporate the trough restoring, particularly at St. Anna trough, we start to see really strong cyclonic circulation pattern appearing, along with deeper density profiles increasing. That is, again, due to steric effects. The couple simulations, everybody's game. We do not see similar sensitivities necessarily. And in this case, smaller vertical mixing and smaller GM coefficient actually seems to be improving the cases. Trough restoring is added to that one in the red line. It is what it is, I guess. We are at the mercy of the surface fluxes in fully coupled simulations. What is robust across these simulations is this circulation pattern. The control case is shown the panel A. The trough restoring case by itself in the control, you can see again emergence of that circulation pattern. Just reducing the mixing coefficients themselves do not change that thing much or do not reproduce any kind of circulation pattern. But as soon as we add the trough restoring, particularly at St. Anna trough, that circulation pattern seems to be captured. So I thought that this was an easy problem. We would be able to fix this thing relatively quickly by identifying where the sources are. Well, I mean, this trough region seems to be important. What the heck do we do to fix that? So with that, I'll summarize. We have some ideas, but we don't have the fix. Inflows from the troughs at the shelf break, especially the St. Anna trough, seem to be the most significant sources of these biases. Restoring inflow TNS improves the Atlantic water properties in two ways, by directly correcting its hydrography first, and then we are seeing through densification the steric effect and then enhanced cyclonic barotropic circulation in the interior near the boundary current regions. Weaker vertical mixing and scaled mesoscale mixing, that's weaker mesoscale mixing diffusion coefficients, also partially improve the biases, but their impacts appear to be secondary, but the coupled simulation results are sort of mixed. So the origins of the Atlantic water biases seem to be rather complicated. I don't think that they are directly related to the incoming water properties from the Atlantic Ocean. Representation of processes needs to be improved, perhaps new parametrizations. My immediate thinking was, well, maybe we need another overflow parametrization in this region to improve the mixing, but that may be, I don't know, not an easy thing to tackle. We need to, it looks like we need to get the right TS properties maybe over the shelf regions, but particularly subsequent flow down the slopes and entrainment, and that involves also the interior properties, TS properties, then they become rather complicated. So I'll stop there and take questions. Bill doesn't believe in the results, I think.
So Gökhan, this trough, which you think is key, that's an inflow, not an outflow.
There's an outflow. I should try to show.
No, is it inflow? Are you changing the water properties going into the Arctic or coming out?
We are changing it right. Well, it's actually we are changing it At the outflow.
That makes sense, because that's typically a data assimilation thing, that the ocean's like a string. You can pull it, but you can't push it.
Right.
Okay.
It is, I didn't go over the details, but it's outflow, yeah.
Yes.
Question, we haven't looked at CSM3 yet, but we can take a look at it. I mean, my problem here is that depending upon which model version you look at, different forcings and all that stuff, we end up getting completely different, well, I mean, quite different bias structures.
So I'll comment that in that part of the ocean, the new coordinate is still just Z star.
We did actually look at the biases in MOM6, not in CSM3 configuration, but that's, I guess, the earlier version. But we did see similar biases, code biases, both in G star coordinate and hybrid coordinate. I'm not sure whether that's improved with the improved tuning. I don't know. Yeah.
One experience that you have not done, I think, will be with the high res to try to restore like on the shelf, and because I'm wondering if there is two aspect to the issue, like the inability of the low res to capture the flow in the trough, and then like the hydrography on the Barents and Jinsey. And so I'm like in the high res, maybe it will be sufficient to restore, like get the right hydrography on the Barents and Kara-Sea, for example, and then the resolution will do the better job with like the flow in the trough. I don't know.
Chime in, but we have done quite a lot of experiments in the shelf regions by itself, isolating. So one thing that we thought, actually, who thought was essentially it was the incorrect circulation path, particularly north of Svalbard. We did a bunch of experiments there, but none of them actually fixed that problem. So I don't know whether that'll be the solution or not. So, I mean, who has done a lot of experiments? Do you want to chime in more with those experiments? Yeah.
But we never tried this Barents Kara-Sea restoring in high-res configuration. Yeah. So maybe it'll work. I don't know. Yeah. We can try if we have enough resource.
The good thing is that they appear within 30 years, so you don't have to run it too long, or even earlier.
Thank you, Gökhan. I think we'll move on to our next speaker, Rita.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the dataset for forcing ocean sea ice models that we are developing here at NCAR. And this forcing dataset is based on ERA 5 reanalysis. And why did we choose ERA 5? Because ERA 5 is a trusted reanalysis product. It has a high spatial and temporal resolutions that is suitable for forcing high-resolution Adian coastal ocean and sea ice models. It has a quarter-degree resolution and hourly data. This reanalysis is up to date and updated near real time. It's going back in time as far back as possible for the high-resolution product, so it starts from 1940 and goes to the present day. And we have a buy-in, support, and collaboration with the ECMWF group that is producing the reanalysis product. And they have an institutional commitment for continued production of the reanalysis datasets, and it has no redistribution issues. So what we do here in this project, we basically largely follows the process that has been described in Tsujino et al. 2018 paper when they were developing the previous OMIP forcing, the GRA 55 DO reanalysis. And generally, our ERA 5 correction strategy consists of several steps. So the first step is the adjustment of the main variables to remove biases. Then we, because Era 5 doesn't have any data about the river runoff and things like that. So we create the data set about the river and glacier runoff and discharge. And after these adjustments are made, we do the global heat and freshwater balance adjustments with a strategy to capture the historical warming trend that we see in observations. So here is a table with the main adjustments that have all been completed now. So on the left column, there is the variables that we produce with this data set. So it has all main variables that are needed to force the ocean CIS models. And basically, yeah, here is a summary, and I will go through each of these variables separately in a minute. But generally, what was new compared to GRA 55DO is that we use the newer reference data sets and slightly different approach for the freshwater part of this product. So let's start with the temperature. So one of the known biases in Era 5 is that it has a warm bias in the Arctic Ocean. And indeed, when we compare Era 5 surface air temperatures to multi-reanalysis mean, it has warmer bias at polar latitudes and cold bias elsewhere. And to correct for it, we use the weighted mean of several reanalysis products, and they are listed here. It's weighted, so the coarser resolution reanalysis are given less weight and high resolution reanalysis are given higher weight. And basically this is the map that is shown of the monthly offset, this is the mean offset that has been applied to Era 5 surface temperature, and it will be different for every month. But generally, yeah, we are cooling the polar latitudes a little bit and warming the all other latitudes. And here I will just show the time series for the temperature, but basically the corrected Era 5, which is shown here in the blue line, in the thick blue line, is closer to the ensemble of all other reanalysis data than original Era 5 that is shown in black here. This correction doesn't seem to introduce any spurious trends, which is good. So for the specific humidity, before the main correction, first we did some procedure to preserve the relative humidity using the adjusted temperature. And after that, we did the adjustment of the specific humidity, and we also did a similar thing as we did for the temperature when we applied monthly climatological correction using the same multi-reanalysis ensemble. So it's the same idea as a temperature correction, but here we used multiplicative factor instead of the offset that we used for the temperature. And we see here that compared to the multi-reanalysis mean, Era 5 has higher specific humidity in the tropics and lower humidity elsewhere, and we corrected to account for it. So moving to the radiation. So this is I'm showing here the, again, mean monthly multiplication factor that has been applied to the shortwave and long-wave radiation. And the biases in reanalysis in the shortwave radiation are associated with some deficiencies in the cloud, in the way how reanalysis are dealing with clouds. So it's a documented issue, and to correct for it, we applied this multiplication factor. So for the winds, we did basically there were two stages of correction. On the first stage, we did despiking of the surface winds. One of the known Era 5 issues is that sometimes the reanalysis show the spikes in the 10 meters wind velocities that reach up to 300 meters per second, which is a lot, and it seems to be associated with, it seems to be linked with the 4D VAR window edges, because these peaks are magically disappearing when the new 4D VAR window starts. So it's, seems to be some assimilation issue. And here we basically detected these events using the 50 meters per second threshold, because I tried to do with lower thresholds, but they capture the real storm systems. And generally we have, in total, we have 82 events for this period of time from 1979 to 2024. In this map here, maybe it's not very clearly seen, but it's basically shown the locations where both U and V wind velocities are reaching 50 meters per second and more, and mostly it's happening over the continents. But here I'm showing the example for Yeah, so here I'm showing the example here when sometimes we have this peak in the wind speed over the land, but it still has this ripple-like structure that spreads into the ocean. So we want to correct for it. And to do it, we did some time-space interpolation that has been applied to U and V winds with a plus minus 20 degrees footprint. And we checked for other fields as well, and we did the same for the temperature and humidity. However, surprisingly, we didn't see any artifacts in sea level pressure, as well as radiation and precipitation. So, and on the second stage, we were correcting the wind vectors. As a reference data set, here we were using CCMP. It's a cross-calibrated multi-platform product that blends all available scatterometers and radiometer data. Yeah, it's consistent with most of the reanalysis, most of the other, it's a blended product from all other observations of the winds. So we did the same correction methods that is following Sojin et al. 2018 that has been used for GRA55DO. So we apply scaling and rotation factors to the wind vectors. And so scaling factor adjusts for the wind speed differences between Aero5 and satellite product, and rotation factor is based on the complex COF method, which is basically gives very similar results to Large and Jaeger 2009, but avoids the spurious spikes in the winds in the low winds region. So for the precipitation, at this stage, at least at the first stage, we didn't do any correction of the precipitation over ocean, because there are some evidence that the Aero5 precipitation is rather good over the ocean, at least, compared to the observational-based data sets. And here I'm showing the time series of the total precipitation. So this was done. This was in raw GRA reanalysis, and this was for their corrected data set. And this is what the uncorrected Aero5 looks like. So it's pretty good. But yeah, we may explore it in the future versions of the dataset. We may do some sort of corrections. So to create the dataset of the solid and liquid runoff, we basically, so for the Antarctic solid and liquid discharge, we use the Schmidt et al. Dataset, and also because of it has a limited temporal coverage and a strong interannual variability, as you can see on the upper plot here, we basically calculated the mean annual runoff and applied for all years and distributed circum-Antarctically with proportional contribution with the regional contributions that are proportional to the climatological pattern. And for the Greenland solid and liquid discharge, we use also Schmidt dataset and Menkov dataset. And for the river runoff, we use the simulations with the hydrological model Camouflage that has been forced by Aero5, and it has been done by people in ECMWF, and we excluded the Greenland coastal runoff to make sure that we avoid the double counting. So, okay, after doing adjustments of all the surface variables, we also did the global balance adjustments for the heat and freshwater fluxes. And here I'm basically showing all the components of the heat fluxes, and we tried to make sure that all of them sum up to the historical ocean surface energy imbalance that we see from the observations. And here we basically, how it was done in GRA55DO, it has been this total Q flux was basically balanced to 0. And here what we do, we balance it to 0 prior to 1980 because it has a lot of observational uncertainty and like it's poorly data constrained before then. But after 1980, we try to fit the surface energy imbalance that is observed. So basically, to get this value of alpha that is being applied to the radiation, because it's hard to apply it to latent and sensible heat flux because a lot of variables go into calculating it, we basically take all of these variables from the output from our flux only runs with the CSM that have been forced by Aero5 data with the first set of corrections applied to it. And also we estimated these two components. This is the heat fluxes due to the freshwater inputs and outputs and also the ice-ocean interaction. And we estimated this from outputs from the GKs runs with the CSM that has been forced by GRA55DO. And basically we came up with a value of alpha that is varying throughout the year. And again, prior to 80, we are making sure that our imbalance, so this full equation is equal to 0, and after that it's equal to these values. And basically, on average, our alpha, it's a factor that is applied to the radiation fluxes. It averages to 0.98, so it means that we apply 2% reduction in radiative fluxes. And this is for the comparison what has been done for GRA55DO. It's a little bit smaller, but it's kind of a similar magnitudes. And here I'm just briefly showing the resulting heat fluxes. So this is the radiation fluxes, latent and sensible heat fluxes. And also we show the total heat flux here. And basically we try to force, as I said, we try to force our data set to be close to 0. And here it's slightly larger than 0 because we want to be matching the observational data. For the fresh water, so we also did the global balance adjustment for the freshwater fluxes. And in the case of GRA55DO, when they were creating this data set, they basically came up with beta, so the precipitation operation and the river runoff would all be equal to 0. And in our case, when we compare the global mean, evaporation, precipitation, and runoff, our values for evaporation and precipitation are very similar to the corrected GRA-DO reanalysis, but our runoff is larger. And generally, when we try to, so in the case of GRA-DO, this beta was 1.02, so they applied 2% enhancement to precipitation during this correction. And in our case, when we sum it all together, it's very close to 1. So at this stage, we didn't do any adjustments to the freshwater fluxes. And also, I wanted to say a couple of words about, so apart from creating this data set, we want to propose a different spin-up strategy for the OMIF forcing. So if in the past, if the standard protocol was to use several cycles of the full data set for the full period that has been covered by GRA55DO, here we are testing the approach when we are using several cycles of just 10-year segments of this new data set. And after that, we are using the full duration of the Aero 5 corrected reanalysis. And this proposed approach, we want to aim to reduce the end of the cycle artifacts and reduce the computational time. And we are currently testing different segments for this spin-up, trying to be in the area that is more or less data constrained, but at the same time doesn't capture the warming trend as much. The results look promising. We are still working on figuring it out completely, but we are testing this approach right now. Okay, and I wanted to finish by just saying, showing the status and timeline. So we did the adjustments of the forcing variables for this new data set. We created the runoff and discharge data sets that is suitable for model runs. And we did the balancing of the global heat and the fresh water. And currently what we are doing, we are testing this first version of data set with CSM and testing our proposed spin-up protocol. And once we are happy with all of it, we are ready to share these data sets with GFDL and LANL so they can test it within their models. And then based on the results of this test, we may need to add some additional adjustments. And hopefully in fall, we will be able to give this data set for a broader testing and evaluation in other models. Yes, that's everything. Thank you so much.
Any questions for Rita? Bill.
I mean, you might have said this, but I missed it. When you said you create the runoff and discharge data sets because they're not part of the European Center data, have you got, do those need to be updated as well in future years?
Okay.
Or are they based on ECMWF stuff so that when they update their stuff over the next few years, this will get done as well?
Yes, yes. So basically, I mean, it's probably not correct to say, I mean, I didn't create them from scratch, but I used for some of them, so for everything except the river runoff, I used the Schmidt dataset, which they have a paper in 2025, which is basically about the freshwater forcing for the climate models, and I just I basically use this data. And for the river runoff, I'm using the runs with a hydrological model that have been done by people in ECMWF. They seem to be committed to kind of keep doing it. So hopefully, I don't know, we'll see. Fingers crossed, yeah.
Frank, yeah.
Yeah, the corrections for wind speed look very much like surface currents, which sort of suggests we're conflating relative and absolute wind in the correction with model bias in the ECMWF product. Are you recommending that these forcings be used with or without surface currents included in a stress calculation in the models?
Well, at this point, that's a great question because we debated this issue among ourselves as well. We were going to go initially with the relative winds and then try a few things, but that's an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, but with the relative winds, it's also challenging because they need to be relative to something, right? And then they need to be. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for the talk. Just have a clarifying question on the temperature bias correction. So that plot you had, like, it was colder at the poles, warmer pretty much everywhere else, especially in the tropics, and that was the difference between era 5 and the multi-reanalysis mean of all the other reanalyses, right?
This was the map that I was showing. It was the correction factor that we applied.
Right.
So Era 5 is larger, Era 5 is warmer in the Arctic, and we apply the correction factor that makes it
But
cold
when
in
you
the
say
Arctic.
warmer, you mean warmer than the multi-reanalysis mean of all the other reanalyses, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But aren't you sort of pretending then that all the mean of all the other analysis is the truth and era 5? I don't quite. If era 5 is the most developed reanalysis.
It's a documented issue.
The known issue in Area 5, in fact, the local bias in Area 5 temperatures can be up to 14 degrees Celsius. Canadian group actually ran their ocean model and sea ice coupled model with the raw data set. Within 10 years, they melted the entire sea ice in the Arctic.
Okay.
So it's a major known issue in the ERA 5 reanalysis product.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Is it related to this one or yeah?
I mean, the issue is related to snow on the sea ice, and that's done poorly in all the reanalysis.
Yeah.
So I think the question is still relevant. Do you trust the other reanalysis? I mean, it's an issue with the conduction of heat through the ice and snow.
Yeah.
It's also a winter issue.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you're monthly correcting?
Yes, it's
or-
monthly
okay.
corrected. Yeah, I'm just showing the general, because it's correct. There is a different correction factor for every month, basically. Yeah.
There are, I believe, if I may be wrong, there are in-situ data comparisons as well. So they are also showing that ERA 5 is, non-biased.
The other reanalyses
Are bad, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Ben.
Thanks for the talk. So I believe Era 5 also runs a wave model. Have there been any thoughts to adding that eventually to the data set to provide information for approach and mixing and things like that that are connected to waves?
Potentially, I don't know.
Cool.
We want to finish with this stuff first and then think about
Understood.
other things potentially. Yeah, but thank you.
Well, we should probably move along. And Rita is here, so you can ask more questions. Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
So our next speaker, if I'm not mistaken, is William. So please go ahead.
So today I'm going to talk about a low resolution version of the ocean model for. I'm going to talk about a low resolution version of the ocean model for CESM3. And how do I go to? How do I go to the next? Oh, okay. Okay, so the model that we developed is a 2-degree nominal resolution configuration. So the original motivation for developing this model is for the CESM tutorial that will take place next month. So we just want to provide students with a model that can run very fast and that take relatively little resources. But then it also has the potential for fast debugging and testing for future model development. And then in the long term, we're also thinking we can, if we, like once we tuned it, so the performance is relatively good, then we can use it for biogeochemistry and maybe paleoceanography applications where you can run the model for many years relatively quickly. So this is, so the horizontal resolution for this model is 2 degrees in the zonal direction, and for the meridional direction, we have a variable resolution which looks like what I showed in this figure. So we have some refinement along the equator and also 6 degree north and south, just to better resolve those areas. So like in total, we will have 128 degree grids in the meridional direction and then 180 equally spaced grid in the zonal direction. So the grid is, the grid configuration is actually slightly different from the what we use for the 2/3 degree resolution model. So what I showed on the left is the ORCA grid, which is used in the 2/3 degree resolution model. And for the 2 degree model, we use the free grid, which is the tool developed in GFDO. So it is still a tripod grid, but then you can see the grid configuration for the northern hemisphere is kind of different. It's mainly just because the ORCA, like the 2 degree resolution is relatively too coarse for the ORCA grid to work properly. So that's why we decided to use a different configuration. And then this is what it looks like, the coastline looks like in the 2 degree model, which as you can expect is very coarse. So this is what we have from the raw data, where you can see that the Panama Canal is open, and then other things like the English Channel is closed, the Red Sea is closed, the Persian Gulf is also closed, and then it's also missing quite a few features along the coastlines. And then we spent quite a few time do some menu adjustment for the coastline, and this is what we the land mask looks like after the menu adjustment, and we're expecting to do further adjustment once we start to tune the model. So right now this model is very preliminary. We just had a first couple runs on this model. So all the configuration for the first try is based on the 2/3 degree model, which Gustavo will talk about in the later. And so this is based on the alpha 9b comp set, and we use the same vertical coordinates as the 2/3 degree model, which has 75 hybrid layers. And then right now the model is running on ocean only. It's not coupled to the atmospheric model. And we use the J-array for the atmospheric forcing. It is coupled to the WaveWatch 3, the wave model, and it also has it used the size for the sea ice model. But the model runs relatively fast. So for this type of the PE layout, we can finish running about 60 years in a single day. And again, this is the ocean only case. So next, I'll show some preliminary results from the model. Again, this is very, very preliminary. It's just the first try. We haven't done any in-depth tuning on this model. So the sea surface height looks reasonably good at this stage. You can see the patterns, the spatial distribution of the patterns match the observation relatively good. And also the zonal averaged sea surface height, except for near the Antarctica, which I'll discuss in more details later. So this is the mixed layer depths in March. Again, the figure shows that the model results fits the observation relatively good. Then this is the mixed layer depths in September. So there we see some problem in the southern hemisphere along the Antarctica. So there we see some, the model has some unrealistically deep mixed layer, which shows in both plots. So in the zonal average plot, you can see the spike over there. Then we also plot the meridional overturning circulation. So this is the zonally averaged over the whole globe. Again, you can see some problem along the Arctic, along the Antarctica. But other than that, the rest of the ocean looks relatively reasonable. So if you just ignore that part and let's take a look at the Atlantic, the AMOC, then we can see it's it's quite reasonable. So we've plotted some time series on the right, and on the left the zonal average of 26-degree average over the simulation period, which is 25 years. So the comparison is with both the 2-degree model, 2-third-degree model, and the observation. So in both cases, you can see that for the model, for the first try, it's relatively reasonable, I would say. So we have more comparison here. So this is the ACC transport measured at the Drake Passage. Again, this is a comparison between the 2-degree model and the 2-third-degree model. So the time series still looks pretty reasonable at this point. So in summary, so we developed this 2-degree model for the CESM tutorial, but then we also hoping that it will have the potential for model debugging and testing in the future. And then in the long term, once the models are tuned and performed relatively well, then we can use it for biogeochemistry and paleoceanography applications. And also, because the model runs relatively fast, maybe we can use it for automatic model tuning with some kind of machine learning algorithm. At this stage, the model is still very preliminary and still needs extensive tuning. But many diagnostics such as the SSH, AMOC, ACC transport is reasonably good at this point, except for the unrealistic polynyous formation and the mixed layer depths along the Antarctica, and we will need to spend more time to fix that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for William?
Yeah, have you had a look with when you did your modifications to put land back in? Have you kept about the right amount of sea ice area or ocean area over the whole globe? Or have you got too much land now?
I haven't looked at that.
It's not a bad thing to try and keep it about the same.
Yeah, yeah.
If you put some land in here, take it away somewhere else.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, just another quick question. You talk about potentially using this for BGC applications. Have you looked at the BGC? Does any of that look good or bad, or have you spent time on that yet?
No, I think it's too early at this stage.
Yeah.
We need to get the model right first.
It's really cheap though. It's only you can get 60 years a day.
Yeah.
And the cost is probably, I don't know, quite a small fraction, right? Of the 2/3. Okay. If there are no other questions, the last presentation is by Gustavo. He'll give us an update on the CESM 3 ocean 2/3 degree model.
Afternoon. So initially I was going to talk about, walk through the main parameterizations and combine with the most recent historical runs that we have. But then I changed my mind, like we're still running into a few issues, and I decided it would be more useful to show the latest in development and get feedback from the community. So these two simulations are from the 2/3 workhorse. One is fully coupled, the other one is forced. Which one is which? Can play one more time, maybe. Can you animate one more time, please? Thanks. Bottom is what? No, the other way around. The bottom is forced. And you can, the reason why, you can see there's a hurricane that just, we force with JRA, which is a 1/4 degree, but then we couple with CAM, which is about 1 degree. So the forcing, when it's GKs, it has the site, that's the point. And the point I want to make here, and I've talked to a few people about this, if I were to redo this exercise of tuning a couple model, I would propose that we try to combine, like when we run the fully coupled, then we save a couple of history files, and then we try to use that to tune the GKs and in an interactive way. So what Rita just presented here, perhaps we should do that within our own couple system to better tune our model. But anyway, that's for lesson learned, and Dave Lawrence talked about a little bit about this in the morning, but this is one of the suggestions I have from the ocean model side. So I have this table here which compares the key differences between POP2 on the left, MOM6 used by GFGL on their older versions, so OM4 and ESM 4.1 in the middle, and then on the right is the MOM6 CSM3. So between POP and MOM6 CSM3, there's a lot of differences. I'm not going to highlight all of them here. What I'm highlighting, though, is the main differences between the other two systems, so what's in blue and red. So for example, with CSM3, we now have KPP with the FP mix and Stokes-Mohs package, which combine wave information to drive vertical mixing. We also have the the latest in the mixed layer eddies parameterization from Bodner et al. 2023. We added wave coupling to it. And then we have 2 flavors of backscatter. We have the Lith plus E backscatter with, putting back some of the energy dissipated by the biharmonic operator. And then we also have the stochastic GM plus E, which is recycling some of the energy lost by the GM flattening of the isopycnals. They complement each other. And we also have many other things, mostly, almost all of them were added by Ian and his group. So unfortunately, Ian left, but huge thanks to Ian Grooms and his group for helping us put this model together. This schematic is showing what we are doing in terms of vertical mixing with and without waves, and thanks to Bill Large for putting it together. I'm not going to go through all the scenarios. The important here is that in the arrows in green is the out-of-the-box option. In black, or field black, it's CSM, basically recovering CSM2. And then in open arrows that are open on the right side are things that are possible we haven't tested yet. Let's focus first on the green arrow. So if you're using waves, use waves equals true. So you can specify how many wave bands you get from the wave model, and that's the user can specify that, and the right amount of bands. And we're using 3, which includes the tail. And then you can specify some other things, like if you're doing non-local momentum, vertical mixing or stress, if you're mixing along the Lagrangian stress or Eulerian, and how if you're applying Stokes mixing or not. Importantly, like when we add waves and then we have the Stokes velocities, we sum the Lagrangian and the Eulerian, that becomes the total. And at that point, you're no longer using the traditional Navier-Stokes, but rather you're doing the wave average Buzinask equation. So it's a different set of equations than we're using POP and what we're using in CSM MOM6 without waves. And we'll have to explain this well when we release this model. So there's additional terms that get enabled in that case. And also there's a lot of software that got added to make this happen. And when we brought this back to the consortium, it was difficult to recover all the answers. So we could not recover the CSM2, for example, with MOM6 at the time answers. And huge thanks to Bob Hallberg, William, and others for now allowing us to recover the answers. So we now have a framework that within the vertical mixing via CV mix in MOM6, we have all these possibilities at our leisure. Again, on the vertical mixing part, when we start adding waves and doing tests, at the time we were using the Richardson number-based scheme only for computing the boundary layer depth. And we are looking at the temperature bias at 75 meters that we were getting at the time. And if you look at in the tropics, there's a red pretty much in all the oceans, so it's a very large bias. And this is roughly where the thermocline sits. And then when I showed this to Bill Large, Bill was like, well, I think we can do better than that. And then he went back and implemented this option to do the entrainment rule, which was actually updated on the KPP that was published in 2021, in which he used this different rule for computing estimating the boundary layer depth. And in fact, we don't use only entrainment rule. Entrainment rule is used if the no solar buoyancy flux is less than 0, which is then it's leading to convection. So it doesn't happen all the time everywhere. It does happen, and we have ways to show where this is active in the model. But when you add that on top, we were able to reduce this bias significantly. So that's what we're using now, is a combination of the old KPP 1994, Richardson number-based criteria 0.3, with this new scheme of using the entrainment rule, which you use TKE coming from different components, with different weights, or there's the buoyancy, there's the wind force, there's the waves, that help us get this better estimate. Still, in terms of improvement, we saw this slide earlier from Dave Lawrence's presentation, and I also presented this before, but when we added the lithium plus E backscatter, we were able to see these Sochia jets, which were otherwise absent in MOM6 without backscatter, also pop on the top right, and you see them in the observations. So again, this was presented before, like we don't fully understand why they emerge, and that's no research to be done, but they appear here, and what's important is in force simulations with biogeochemistry, with the backscatter and the jets present, we get significant improvement in the biases of oxygen and nitrate. We haven't done the same exercise in fully coupled yet because the BGC is only coming up now, but no, that is very exciting, and for the fully coupled, if we can get the same type of response to have improvements in these quantities. I will also mention that there is evidence that when we use backscatter with and without backscatter, ENSO looks very different. And it seems to be much better when backscatter are present. Again, we don't fully understand. That's research that will be done in the next months, but just know, as we look through the data, through the different simulations we have done, you can clearly see a response in different climate metrics from John Fasulo, also Isla Simpson has showed that as well. Now moving to the latest couple simulations. And I won't go through all of the cases here. Some of them are not even recorded in our database yet. The last three, they started Thursday and Friday of last week. But no, I'm just adding this here to help explain the spin-up procedure. So we've been spinning up the PI control using multiple simulations. That will be clear in the next slide. And we're still like fine-tuning the model, but we're continuing within this time series. And some of the last few runs are very short, so I will only mention them, what I'm doing, but I won't show meaningful results today. Okay, so this is the global mean ocean potential temperature, and I'm concatenating all these cases. So we have more than close to 500. It's actually, the time series is longer than that. There is about 100 years initially that I'm not adding here. So we have like more than 500 years of integration so far in fully coupled. And on the right, on the label in parentheses, I'm showing the equivalent to the rest. So the ocean uptake, heat uptake, assuming the beginning and the end of each simulation. And to give you an idea of the rest, so this is using the ocean area, not the global area. If you multiply by 0.3, by 0.7, then you get the ocean area, or you get the equivalent to the raston from the atmosphere. And we've done that, and there's good match between what the atmospheric modelers compute as raston. There's also geothermal heating enabled here. So of the numbers in parentheses, on the right, you have to remove 0.1 watts per meter square to actually see what is the raston coming from the atmosphere. I'm plotting the CSM2 PI control as well, and I've shifted that so it matches the beginning of the time series. But no, including the geothermal heating, we are comparable. If we remove the geothermal heating, the raston is much smaller in CSM3. Okay, so now showing some of the latest in development, which we are working on. Up to very recently, the AMOC residual was looking very good. So that's on the top left. Run 341 was reasonable, nothing to worry about. And then as the model continued in that time series that I showed before, like there's a follow-up run, which was 350, we started to see this reversal in the residual around those latitudes that I'm highlighting. So we expect the simulation the circulation should be positive as shown in the left, and then suddenly became negative, and the latitude corresponds to the Nordic seas. And when I showed this to Goka, and Goka was like, "Oh, there's something wrong," and we start investigating, and he quickly went to the mixed layer eddies parameterization. Sorry, there's a typo there. So now I'm showing the overturning only due to that parameterization. And on the left is from run 341, the same that is shown on the top. So on run 341, if you looked at the residual, there is no indication of a negative circulation. But if you look at the circulation induced by the parameterization on the bottom, there is already, it is trying to reverse the circulations. So what's happening is, as we are integrating the model, that this parameterization is constantly trying to reverse the circulation, and then eventually it will reverse the circulation, which is what happened in the case on the right. And now notice when it does so, then the actual contribution from the parameterization gets stronger. That's the bottom right plot. So that's a problem. It's not the only one though. If you look at the ACC volume transport, and again, I'm concatenating the different simulations. I'm also showing CSM2 low res and CSM1 high res, the two on the bottom. We start to see these oscillations, and they used to be much larger in amplitudes than we're seeing right now. Right now, in the middle of the time series, the oscillations have about 20 Sverdrups in amplitude, which we don't see them in many products. The observed estimate, unfortunately, you cannot see because of the color, but it's between 163 and 183. So it's within that observed range, but it is oscillating quite dramatically within a 50 to 60 year period. And we've been trying very hard to get rid of it. If you look at case 348, so that's the black dashed, it is the one that is oscillating the least, and that one is still going. So I'm hopeful that we'll have something more stable on that run. The other run that we were very hopeful of, it was the 350, so the dashed red, which suddenly gave a huge jump over more than almost 40 Sverdrups. So I stopped that run over the weekend. It's no longer viable. And you might say, why does it matter that's oscillating? That oscillation propagates in many other metrics. So for example, here is the global overturning circulation strength of the ABW cell. So I'm doing a time series, I get the global MOC and compute the maximum below 3,000 meters to get the sense of the ABW cell. And you see a similar type of oscillation in this metric. And when we are about to do the BGC spin-up, we need to save a couple of history files over a finite period and then loop over that. And if you have these long oscillations, that will make the exercise much harder. Also, that type of oscillation propagates in other modes of variability, as has been shown by others from the CSM development team. So we are trying to address this very, very strongly. No, it's not moving. Okay, if you look at, in trying to understand these ACC oscillations, I start plotting different things, and then one of them was the area-weighted mixed layer depth, and this is south of 60 south, and I've done that for all these simulations that we're using in the different time series. And then you see this scenario, and there's two things that pop up. So case 341 and case 350, they have these jumps. So what's going on in these cases? And some of you might already guess. But I want to say, what I'm about to show is not the only explanation for why we have oscillations in the ACC. It is one of them, because you see in certain periods, but you don't see in all the time series. And in the case of, I'm only showing, going to show case 350, so these are annual mean mixed layer depths. And for this particular year, and it happened for many years, you see this convection, open ocean convection. So just to the eastern side of the Weddell Sea, so it's not far from the mild rise, where in nature you do see convections every now and then, but no, it's rare. In our models, when they happen for multiple years, and that leads to problems like we see, one of the ACC drops, in that case 350, I believe is because of this polynya. Or I'm sorry, I'm saying polynya. I actually don't know if it's a polynya. I'm looking at Marika. I look at the sea ice fields over the weekend, and I couldn't see a sign of open ocean polynya. So it's weird. Like the mixed layer depths are definitely showing that there is open ocean convection, but I actually don't know if I can say that there is open ocean polynya. What are we trying to do to solve these two problems? Is they both, or seems like both, could be alleviated by the mixed layer eddies parametrization. Definitely the first one, it became clear that that was being driven by the MLE parametrization. The second one is less clear, but no, there is strong evidence that it could help us with that as well. So there's two options if you want to represent submesoscale eddies, or mixed layer eddies, I should be more precise, in MOM6. There's the Fox-Kemper-Ferrari Hallberg, which you call FFH scheme, which is the original scheme. And then the later one, the Bodner et al. 2023, they both restratify the ocean mixed layer by overturning stream function that flattens isopicanol. And the way they're coded is through this stream function. So FFH is on the left and Bodner is on the right. The first thing to highlight is they both have the capital H square, but then Bodner on the right also has a lowercase h, which is the boundary layer depth. So lowercase h is boundary layer depth, capital H is the mixed layer depth. So FFH is being scaled by h squared, depth squared, while Bodner is a depth cubed. So it is responding more rapidly to changes in boundary layer depth, mixed layer depth. The other one is with FFH on the left. There was this constant in the beginning of the expression that was one of the tuning parameters, but also you had the length scale of the frontal length scale, so that's the L sub f in the denominator, which you had to specify, and that was a global value. So you say, my fronts have 1 kilometer, and that's globally. And we know that in nature, the fronts of mixed layer eddies vary considerably. So that was the main physical advantage of using Bodner. They were able to remove the dependence on this fixed length scale, and by now you have only one tunable parameter, C sub r, and then you get this, the frontal length scale is embedded in the expression here. You also got rid of the f squared in the denominator, which is always, it's never a good thing to have f in the denominator. So there's many reasons why we chose to go with Bodner. But it is a new scheme, and we were kind of opening a new can of worms, so we have to be careful when we do that. So what we are doing now, as we saw this, the oscillations is the ACC, and also this reversal of the overturning. First, we are reverting back to the FFH formulation in one of the going back in the time series and then reverting from Bodner to FFH with a length scale of 1 kilometer, and see what that does. And then the second experiment is Ian, Gokhan, and others. They have had the idea of tapering the boundary depths and mixed layer depths that are used in the Bodner scheme. So in convection places, the boundary depth can go below 2,000 meters, and if you're doing all this mixing, you can really change dramatically the solution. And by doing a tapering where the taper we are applying is shown on the right. Basically, you don't do anything up to 900 meters. You use the actual boundary depth, and then greater than that, you just taper, you decrease that very rapidly. So they have now runs going with these two options, and as I said, they're very short, but we can, I'll take some speculation and get some sense of what's going on. So going back to that mixed layer depth, air weighted, only south of 60 south, I'm adding here the two new runs. You cannot see 355 because it's too short and it's on the top of the solid red, but 354, which is the one that has FFH, it's highlighted here. It's a very distinct feature because it doesn't align with the rest of the time series. So it's a substantial change to the model when you do that. It has much deeper mixed layer depths in the Southern Ocean than when you use the boundary scheme. And we've been tuning all the other parameterizations on top of Bodmer. So now making the switch to FFH at this stage is as you can see here, it will, is a shock to the system. Now, the same type of plot for the lab C only, and I often use this as an indication if the Labrador Sea is going to freeze, and the dotted black line is 354, and it's showing very shallow mixed layer depths, which is, it's a sign of increased risk of lab C freezing. And I made this over the weekend, and I checked this morning, indeed, that run is freezing over the Labrador Sea. So it's not ideal. And one caveat is when we apply Bodmer in the Labrador Sea, we have a mask, and we tell the scheme, you don't do anything only in the Labrador Sea. I didn't do the same thing with Bodmer, with FFH, because it was done in a rushed way. So we could do that. There's also the possibility of defreezing, as Dave Lawrence showing this morning. We have the FSD flow size distribution enabled, so the CIs hopefully will work and get us away from that. But nonetheless, we still have the other run with the taper as another alternative. All right, so in summary, we have started the PI control spin-up. It's underway. And it's progressing across multiple simulations. We have more than 500 years so far. And some things only appear as you integrate the model for long enough. And indeed, we are seeing things like open ocean convection near the Weddell Sea. I don't know if it's apollinear or not, but no, definitely convection. They seem to be contributing to large oscillations in the ACC transport, which then propagates to many other climate metrics. We also dealing with this AMOC reversal in the Nordic seas, which is problematic. We are trying to tackle both of these problems with the MLE parameterization by reverting back to an old formulation and also tapering the latest scheme, tapering the boundary depth and mixed layer depths in the latest scheme by Bodmer et al. Which again, the FFH is freezing. We can still do additional things to avoid freezing. But no, I show it is a big shock in the system because it has very different overturning than the Bodmer scheme. And then we also have the one with the taper that is less intrusive to the runs we have done so far and is showing promising results, but it's still too early to take any conclusions. And with that, I'll take any questions, and thank you.
Any questions for Gustavo? Well, everything is so clear.
Thanks for the talk. Considering how few observations there are over the Southern Ocean and over what period, a fairly limited period of time, how confident are we that in the real world there aren't any ACC oscillations? Or how do you know, okay, this is unrealistic, I don't want my model to do this? And at what point are you happy that, okay, this is realistic?
mostly based on simulations. There is a nice paper summarizing the CMIP6 ACC transports, and they show mean standard deviations, and none of the models have such large oscillations as the ones that we are seeing. And then I also showed some results from high resolution models that don't show that. But indeed, like based on observations, we don't know.
But there's quite a few GCMs, at least I think in CMIT 5 and 6, that did have, open ocean convection in the Waddell. Like I know the GFDL model simulates this pretty regularly. Do they not?
Not anymore.
Oh, not anymore? Okay. Well, I know there's something to that in 21st century runs. It happens less often, right? But do they not simulate ACC?
It doesn't seem like it was affecting their ACC. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I think Gustavo indicated that you're correct that we don't have observational evidence or not for the oscillations, but the Ayla and a bunch of others showed how that thing actually translates into other modes of variability, which we have at least reanalysis products. And that kind of like 40 square drop jump and all that stuff impacting other variables as well. So I don't know. I don't think that, yeah. Discussion session right now.
Sure. Yeah.
4 more minutes for discussion.
So what are CESM3 ocean showstoppers? Like what are you guys, as an ocean model working group, what is unacceptable? Do you see what I mean? I mean, we need to have a model. You've got these biases you've mentioned. Is it unacceptable to have a CESM3 with those biases? And is that an arm wrestle with Dave Lawrence, or
well,
I don't know?
I think Dave is less pushy on this, like he's kind of letting up to us, but I will continue fighting until we say like this is it. And yeah, I like if, for example, the reversal in the AMOC, like we don't see that elsewhere. I don't know how big of a problem that is if we go forward with that option, but and that one in particular, we see where it's coming from. I think we're pretty confident it's coming from the MLE. So we should try to address. The ACC is less clear to me. Like there's I don't know if we have many things we can do to mitigate. We've tried so many things. We used to have way worse oscillations. We managed to get now like order 15 Sverdrups with the exception of that 350 case. And we might have to deal with it and just integrate longer with BGC for spin up.
On Marika's point and what you said, and one of the caveats of all this stuff, it hasn't been possible to tune in the G case and then translate over to and that's been a real pain because the G cases look really different and better and everything. But you said if you were forced, we're told it has to be over, I'm not clear what you would choose. Isn't that sort of what you asked? I mean, from all you showed, you've got this to go. I don't know what you'd pick. If you had to say today, here's the configuration, I'm not sure what you'd pick. Maybe you do. I just didn't get it.
If I were asked the question, I would pick 348, which is the dashed black right here. So it's the one that it oscillated a little bit in the beginning here, but then it's mostly stable. However, that one does not have the latest and greatest from the atmosphere. Yeah.
Looks a lot like 350 until, like at that period where they're both not oscillating for that nice period, and then 350 goes off, right? So.
I mean, Gustavo didn't show that those oscillations also come with really large, deep TS changes, right?
Yeah, in temperature. We can kind of predict the oscillation, if you look at temperature drifts only in the Southern Ocean, you can see when a warm blob comes at depth, that's an indication of you're going to slow down your ACC.
Well, I believe eliminated that Polinia doing something with land albedo, which we tried, it didn't work for us. And I don't know how they managed to suppress that. Do you know anything about it?
I mean, I just heard from Mitch that it was happenstance, that they changed the albedo over the Antarctic ice sheet and they got rid of their big Polinas. So I don't think it's that they were doing that in order to get rid of the big Polinas. It just was serendipity, yeah.
Well, in the high res, we do have Polinias, like intermittent Polinia, and as you can see from the time series of ACC, there's not like a big signature of it. So is it really correlated, like highly correlated in the low res? Or?
Why I said, the last event in case 350, that big drop at the end, I think that could be, but no, we were seeing oscillations before in some other cases, and those cases didn't have a Polinia. Or again, I don't know if we have a Polinia. Didn't have the open ocean convection. So it's not the only thing. The same reason is same way is not there's not one single thing that's leading to lab C freeze or the fact that it's not freezing. There's multiple. We have to do multiple things in order to avoid lab C freezing.
So how that CSM high-res Polinia was removed, I think with the different...
In the control case, PI control, we switched to historical, it disappeared, mostly. Did we change? No. But it was a lot weaker, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. Mesa clip runs, right, not the, yeah. In the historical one, is it as big as the PI? Yeah, PI is really large.
Actually, no, I looked at the historical.
Yeah.
You get
okay, so I'm wrong. Looks gloomy here. Yes.
Case 350 have any threatening to freeze in the lab C?
No, not case 350.
Yeah.
The one that's threatening to freeze is 354. So it's the dotted. Initially I went back on the progression of runs because I knew it was a big, we're changing Bodmer back to FFH. I knew it was a big hit, so I didn't want to go back to, and it was also Gokhan's point, like we should go back in the beginning of the run or run sequence to add that. So it's all the way back there, and that was the one that's freezing.
I would have thought freezing the lab C was unacceptable as a coupled model solution. So,
yes, it is, and yeah, but we've seen this morning that there were instances where the lab C froze and then it defroze with the addition of FSG. So I'll propose to continue that run, but on top, now we have the run with the taper that uses Bodmer. And then I'll propose that we do a FFH without mixing in the Labrador Sea. So the same way as we do with Bodmer.
Stress that thing, even if you use Bodmer, in order to avoid the lab C, in a box region, Bodmer is being shut off.
Yeah.
There's a special map. I don't know how we're going to justify it in a publication, but that's what is happening.
I think we can justify it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Gustavo. This is a general thing to keep us away from whatever we're doing next. But I just feel like, this is kind of demonstrating how the ocean, in part because of the long timescales, is one of the most challenging, in addition to being rich, complex, and beautiful, components of the Earth system model to tune. And I think it is those rich, complex, and beautiful properties that are also holding us back a little bit. I don't know. I would like to see the CESM Ocean Model Working Group have strategies for how we can integrate some of these MLE or AI approaches to try to help this problem along, because I feel like we've been a little decoupled rather relative to some of the other components through no fault of our own necessarily, but I think we should have a strategy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Point taken. I think we're just going through understaffed and going through a lot of issues without many people working, but it is a good point. I would love to see the emulators, ML based. I want to give garbage to them and see them giving garbage back to us. That's something I'm waiting for. Like right now, I just see them giving good results, even when garbage is given to them. So no, I think that point should be taken as well.
Maybe we should take one last one because we are, I think it's the beer and wine hour along with
right, yeah.
Posters.
I
Go
just-
ahead, Dave. Yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
I guess it was my understanding that in this series of 350 runs, that some of the earlier runs, there was no ACC oscillation. So have you sort of tracked it back and figured out what were the pieces that changed along the way?
Yeah, we did, and one of them was the choice of vertical coordinate. And when we went back and when we made the decision of going with hybrid, the runs we had at that point, it was always a Z-star and a hybrid. We are always doing this companion set of runs, and the Z-stars did not have the oscillation. So these could be the hybrid piece. So going isopycanal at the interior combined with something else. And the fact that GFGL had it with MOM6 OM4, it's an indication. And again, that's where the evidence is pointing to.
And then I think when you looked at a Z-star, one of them was oscillating. It was the I thought that even one of the cases there actually showed an oscillation, but I can't remember with Z-star.
Yeah, but like in G case, you could see oscillations in hybrid, but not in Z.
Yeah.
I think if you go couple, maybe you're right.
Okay, maybe time to drink.
Yep.
So after this, whatever. Thank you, everybody. Let's thank all the speakers one more time.